Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Weldon Witness, Bookworm, Film Geek, and Friend. And Christmas is, as the song suggested, coming, it's almost here. So, it's been a week and a half since the strike ended, and, well, getting caught up on schoolwork has been interesting. All of a sudden, I have no projects, and then there are 7 that I completely forgot about, but forgot about in a different way than you might expect. So for the first draft of this show, I wanted to talk to you about how I've been getting back ahead, because when you're a movie and book critic that has to blog at like 2 or 3 different reviews on his site a week, then it can be a little conflicting when you're obviously your education comes first. But I've been keeping up with this website since I was 15, and so it can seem like everything's for your education, but you can't really fit everything in. So I've noticed that most of my assignments, they have been kind of hard to get back to, admittedly, but I have some advice, basically 3 steps on how to get some of these assignments off your back, because the way my class works, I realize that I've been staring at the window, not the camera, is that we're expected to juggle all sorts of assignments and make sure we have all of them done at a time. And sometimes that works for me. Sometimes I prefer to get one out of the way for each one. My first advice is to start as soon as possible. I mean, I was told by many, and I agree with this from personal experience, is that it's hardest to start an assignment, but after you start it, it can get a bit easier. It's like it's hard to put, maybe it's not that hard to put the title on, but maybe the first sentence will not be so easy. Or maybe you just have to make it easy. You could write complete garbage, but then at least you'll have something to start with. You'll have something to go with, and that might make it a little less unsettling. Something else that you should do to make it less unsettling is to make sure you read the entire worksheet, because mystery can be scary in an assignment. You might be doing something and think, I don't know 100% if there's something else I'm supposed to be doing, or if I'm doing this in order, or if this is what I should be doing at all. If you know what you're doing and have it step by step in your mind, it should be okay. And have the worksheet available, like maybe within a meter's radius. I don't know. I shouldn't be... that was a weird example, saying radius in a conversational sentence like that, but you get what I mean. And my last thing to say is worry and not worry at the same time. I found that that worrying about an assignment means you care about that assignment. And if you care about that assignment, then you're not going to forget about it. And you're going to be thinking about the days that go by where you not do it. And also try not to worry too much, or else you'll just sit there just not wanting to start it. Just think about how you're in the course that you wanted to. Hopefully you're in the course that you wanted to take. And so it's what you wanted to learn, and you have some prior experience. But with minus the strike, it's been about a month and a half now, maybe even almost 2 months. So there's that. So I'm gonna give you a short music break, and after that we're going to be discussing books and movies again. For books, it's going to be a special kind of category, one that is not like a 1-sentence category. I'm gonna have to explain how this category works, and then we're going to be talking about some movies that I keep having different opinions about. Okay? All right. See you after the break. Okay, so we're back now, and we're going to be talking about books now. And as I said, this is a genre that, it's hard to describe simply. I'm basically going to be talking about some thrilling dramas. And I mean that you could almost call these thrillers, but there are some of these that don't fall under the thriller category. But let's just say that they have a drama to them, or a connection that I felt to them, that caused the story and what the characters were going through to really make me feel scared for them, or just sympathetic towards them. So you could say that in my second episode, I said that I didn't read many romance novels, and there was basically zero that had covers that basically suggested it. But these are dramas that do still have some romance in them, but basically, these are also dramas where I feel like the romance does add a lot more than and makes it thrilling as well. I recently read a book that, well, it had an interesting story, but it had a couple I didn't ship, and it went right back to that couple too much, so it really ruined it for me. These books are the opposite of what that would be, except that the stories were still good. So enough jibber jabber. The first one I'm going to be talking about is Riding Lessons by Sarah Gruen. She's the author of Water for Elephants, and this was her debut. She wrote Water for Elephants like 3 years back. Now, you might be thinking, riding lessons. Wow, what an attractive title, and what a very action-packed idea. But so I basically thought, when I saw this on the bookshelf at summer camp, a book about a horse farm, I don't know if that would be really good. Just the thought of it makes me tired. But then when you read it and you find out it's not just about a horse farm, but it focuses on the main character, a woman who was in a freak accident 20 years ago, and as a result ran away from this horse farm in shame and despair, and with a teenage daughter who regularly skips school and goes out and smokes, gets tattoos, and also is under a divorce, and has a mom that really feels the abandonment, and a father that was diagnosed with ALS, and not to mention even a horse that the main character Anne-Marie Zimmer feels a weird connection to, like this was the same horse she rode 20 years ago, even though it couldn't be. Well, it's all a combination of a great book. There's another book I read that deals with finance situations, and I'm not old enough to, well, actually, yes, I'm old enough to own a business, but the thought has not occurred to me ever. This book shows what a shoestring business can be like, and I feel like I'm gonna say I feel like I should be saving this for the other book I'm mentioning, but it does really feel like this character is getting herself into some debt and into some intense situations that could potentially destroy the farm forever. I mean, like, not burn to the ground, but basically, because if she does try her best, honestly, and she is not a complete failure, trust me. And also, Anne-Marie's daughter is named Eva, and we see these situations that they really disagree with. It's like a new Freaky Friday without the transformation, but they basically don't understand each other, and they refuse to look at the other side of their arguments. And also Anne-Marie is facing a man that she had a crush on back when she was an Olympic contender for horse racing. So altogether, it really does deal with situations of grief and deceased dreams trying to come back to life, and basically a horse book that shows that you don't need to have an explosion, or you don't need to have a gun for something in entertainment to be both good and gender neutral. The other book, since we're on the subject about finance, that I wanted to talk about was Shopaholic Takes Manhattan by Sophie Kinsella. This is the sequel to the book Confessions of a Shopaholic, the movie, which I like a lot more than the books, and saw when I was like 11 years old. It was based off of that first book and this book. And I borrowed this one from the UOIT library because I just saw it, and I ended up speeding through it when I reached the second half, so fast that I finished like the entire second half in one night that I was up extremely late for. Basically, if you don't know, Confessions of a Shopaholic is about a woman named Rebecca Bloomwood. Like me, she's a journalist, but she's works in finance, and what she does is boring, and when she types something for us to see, she knows that it's boring. But her work doesn't pay much, but she can't handle all of the amazing clothes that she sees. And I'm not addicted to clothes. There are some shirts that I love, but something that I do love is going into bookstores. Basically, every book I see whenever I go to a library or bookstore dares me to read it, or at least take a picture of it. And I've also learned over the years that that getting can be a bit more exciting than receiving. I don't know. So I did kind of relate to her, but honestly, some of the stuff she does is just irresponsible. I mean, shirts and pants are way more expensive than books. So she does, and there aren't any libraries for clothes. So that's a tough thing. And I felt like at the first book, she does get herself into debt, which she does pay off, but I felt like she didn't learn enough. And there wasn't as much of a payoff and not much confessions. But Shopaholic Takes Manhattan was such an improvement over the original. At first, I thought it was just going to be so-so, but like the first one, it's exciting. And what I mean by the thrilling drama part is every time Rebecca makes a purchase saying she'll pay it off, or whatever, I just need this thing, it's so beautiful, I can't wait to try it on, we feel the ink of that receipt. We feel like she is digging herself into a ditch further and further. And as a result, we can't help but read on because we're just curious as to what crisis she's going to get herself into. And the crisis she gets into is very extreme by the time push comes to shove. She ends up going on a trip to New York, and well, with her new boyfriend Luke Brandon, but personally Luke's not my type. I felt like and this is basically just commentary, not criticism, I felt like he was just a businessman who needed to be right all the time and focused on business so much. Rebecca realized the business part and took him out to a very thoughtful dinner during one of the calmer parts of this book. But yeah, I couldn't wait to find out how she would get out of this debt. I couldn't wait to figure out how she got into this debt. And it's basically just a very underrated read. Something that a boy like me can enjoy, even though I disagree with what she's doing. The next one I'm going to be talking about is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is one of the best dystopias I've ever read, really. It's a horrible world, and there are two perspectives, and I don't like many two-perspective books. I feel like maybe they juggle too much, sort of like my assignments, but let's just say that it's a world where there are scholars and marshals, and the marshals are the really bad guys. They're the ones that, well, they're the ones that don't like it when someone can read books. They feel like people who read books should be executed or something. Or basically, they are so drunk on power. And there's this young girl named Leia. I think she's about 15, and the one criticism is this book starts kind of overly fast. Like, so much happens in the first two chapters for both Alea and Elias Viturius, the other main character. Elias is a student and, come to think of it, prodigy at this place called Blackcliff Academy, where he is supposed to all of a sudden go into a big fight with some other marshals to try to find out who will be the next ruler of this universe. And also, basically, Leia has to run away to find a resistance. I mean, you might be thinking unoriginal so far, but let's just say this world is, let's just say that Leia manages to make her way into Blackcliff Academy. When she accidentally spills a little bit of tea or something, the commandant, who, spoilers, was actually the one who killed Leia's parents and probably ordered her brother to be sent to prison, which is the reason she's spying on them in the first place. The commandant ends up giving Leia a scar on her stomach with a knife and all. And that's not the worst of it. There's a sequel called A Torch Against the Night, and while Leia and some of her new friends are hiding in a town, the commandant ends up in the same town and is okay with killing a young little boy who's probably still in diapers and an innocent old man just to bring some gravity and bring some fear to the residents for not obeying. And it works. Like, when Leia ends up trying to spy on the commandant for information, I was really worried about if she'd be caught. And And also, we can see that Leia is an ordinary girl, that we can understand in this novel that bravery can't exist without fear. I feel like a lot of YA books have overly brave characters, but, and I'm not saying Leia and Elias are wimps. They're in fact far from it. They do end up being more and more brave as they go along, but they're never less than human. And also, Leia joins the Resistance, but her specialties are slim, and the Resistance sees that, and so they give her a very big time limit. And when Leia's time starts running out, like she really feels like a churn in her gut or something, and like I felt it too. So basically, this is also very action-packed, and also Elias ends up feeling like the death of these people that he is forced to kill. There's even a fantasy subplot about visiting people before they move on, you call it, in the afterlife. It's really tough, but it's amazing. There's a second sequel called A Reaper at the Gates coming out. I can't wait for it. The next one I'm going to be talking about, which one shall I do? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. This is Life or Death by Michael Robotham, and I think it's probably the edgiest one that I'm going to be talking about. It's basically, and I heard this synopsis on the radio, and it's what caused me to read this book because it's an adult book. It's about a man named Audie Palmer who is about to finish up his 10-year prison sentence for attempted bank robbery and on the street basically a truck robbery, which ended up killing some woman that the police don't know who it is. And he ends up escaping from jail the day before his release. And so as a result, he's now on the run again. People have no idea why he did that at all, but it is what he did. He has about $1,200 from what he did for work in the prison since then, but yeah, it also takes us back and forth between Audie's life as a wanted man and as a teenager with a brother, a girlfriend, and a life, but a very tricky life, like motel, mold, and violence life. And I think that the main reason I'm putting this into my thrilling dramas is not just because I read this in like 2 days because the plot itself was just so interesting, but because of a man named Jeremiah Moss. I think that's what his name was called. Forgive me, it's been about 2 years since I read this, but I know his first name's Jeremiah. He's a man who was like Audie's friend in prison, and he's been in there for like 15 years, and he's probably not going to get out for like another 10 or something. But some mysterious people let him out with a ton of money. And now he gets to go to this big diner. He basically orders as much off the menu as he can, and then shortly after, the manager comes because the waitress said that she thinks that he'll walk out on the bill. And we can sort of understand it, but there's also the fact that Jeremiah is black. We can see that might have a factor in it, and we can see that he's a bit heartbroken. And I've never tried prison food before, but I've read enough dramas to know that very good food after a lot of bad food, especially after 15 years, I can't imagine that would really make it very exciting. So he does end up able to eat this meal. He doesn't get kicked out, thank God, and he manages to be with the wife that he stayed with all these years, named Crystal, for a little while. It was really touching. And also, there's obviously a twist involving Audie by the end. I never saw it coming whatsoever, but actually it was a mystery that I got into when I was about let me think, 4.5 into it. I realized the mystery. I realized who each character really was, and I couldn't believe it. It was genius all around. And the last book I'm going to be talking about before we take a break before movies is a book called Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas. I've heard of a TV show called Designated Survivor. It's about a man who is the only one who survives a big massacre at the White House. And there were so many heirs that he never expected it, but after that night, he is now the president of the United States. This is basically the same sort of plot. A girl named Freya was 23rd in line for the throne, and she likes to focus more on science projects than politics. There's a big celebration of some sorts. And that it actually involves like inside flying doves, and she decides to sneak away from the party to work on a science project with her friend Naomi. And then her dad ends up bursting through the door, saying that, well, that basically everyone that was supposed to be before her is dead, and now she has to rule the land. And also, there are people that are still alive that try to show her how to do everything. You can almost feel like maybe they wanted the crown and maybe meant to kill her too, and they're trying to get around there, because there are some killing attempts that we see, but those were not the reasons that I kept turning the page. You see, ever since I first got interested in politics, I've quickly gotten a little tired of them. I'm tired a bit about the constant attacks from politicians everywhere. I feel like it is a big bloodbath, and but I also feel like Freya was someone that kind of just got put in there just by accident, and even some people suspect that she might have had something to do with it, because since she's the one on the throne. It's almost like imagine the media said that Hillary Clinton had an 85% chance of winning. Think that it's like saying Donald Trump had an 85% chance of winning, and yet Clinton won. We sort of like put the roles backwards, and then there's suspicion and there's unfair judgment, and then we see that Freya starts to care about all this stuff that's happening around. We see that for celebrations and funerals, people are forced to sometimes throw rubies into the water, but there's a family that gets beat up because they can't afford the rubies. Freya sees this and immediately goes to try to put a stop to this. She utilizes the power she's in, and also basically the movie's expert balance of excitement and mystery and drama were perfect. I think this is a standalone. I haven't seen any signs for a sequel yet, but if there is, then I'm going to be there. This is going to be on my best of the year list. And also, I'm not going to spoil who the killer was, but let's just say there's one last thing that happens at the very end. It really was conflictual for me. I didn't know how I felt about that. It really makes you think about what you would have done, and I do want to say it right here, right now. It would really show my capabilities as a book critic, but I shouldn't. Basically, but one thing, this cover looks like a fantasy, but it's really a science fiction and murder mystery. But oh well, I was entertained. Basically, you should read a book and just see if you enjoyed it, because a book could be about someone watching TV and trying to decide which button to press and still be interesting if you write it correctly. Or maybe not. Maybe a TV remote control is a beyond repair idea. But anyway, I'm going to give you a well-deserved break now. Then we're going to be talking about, if you don't remember, but I'm not trying to say you're stupid, I'm going to be talking about movies that I have a different opinion on, or movies I can't make up my mind on. Okay, we're back now. So obviously this is the third time I'm saying this, but there are some movies where I just can't make up my mind. Like I can't make up a solid rating for it. Like I rate an A+ to F scale, but even if I did a number scale or a star scale like some other critics do, then these movies, like I feel I'm at conflicting odds with them sometimes. Sometimes not whether it's thumbs up or down, but actually most of these are in conflict with that. There are some movies that I can't pick between an A minus or A. One example was Get Out, a new horror movie, and there was also I watched My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. I couldn't decide between a C plus or B minus for that one, so I decided to just pick both. That was an instance where I felt like I wish that I could have done a number scale like 5.4 out of 10 or 8.7 out of 10. But anyway, so these are some movies where I can't decide between a thumbs down or up. Sometimes it will just matter what attitude I'm in for a movie, and that will determine it. So, and I'm going to explain what these movies have in common. Well, some movies try unusual things, sometimes stepping out of the norm, and sometimes you appreciate the difference, and sometimes you hate it. I'm going to be giving some examples of that later on. And there are some movies that are generally bad but have some rewatchable clips throughout. In fact, sometimes I end up rewatching a clip of a movie on YouTube, and then I watch the whole movie and forget that the other clip was in there, and I keep forgetting how bad that other clip was. But chances are you'll enjoy a movie or at least recommend it a little bit if the movie has some memorable scenes that you like to rewatch or a scene that you think about whenever the movie comes to mind. Also, some movies won't make a lick of sense but are fun, and some could be masterfully made but without any interesting characters or without an interesting plot, but movies like that can be a real critic divider. So for starters, my first example I'm going to give is Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues, and I think that's an example of a movie that's generally bad but very rewatchable. I haven't seen the first Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. I was 5 years old when that came out, and I had never heard of it growing up. I know lots of people did. And the reason that I'm putting it in here is originally when I saw it at the theater, I gave it a B minus, but as I rewatched it, it seemed to drag a little bit too much for me, and I put it down to a C. And I felt like it was crazy dumb and sometimes gross and even sexist and racist, but as someone who's in journalism, I could feel a bit of a relation to this. The company that they work for is called GNN. I don't need to tell you what that's a spoof of. And Ron Burgundy comes up with an idea to win a bet against James Marsden's character, Jack Lyme, in doing some news that everyone will watch. And the gang are talking about some stuff. They say, why don't we just tell them what they want to know rather than need to know? I mean, it completely changes up the reasoning for news. I mean, the news is there to show people what's important and to show them of danger, of criminals that are out there. But their version, some of their stuff I don't even want to say. Some of them. They decide to even at one point smoke in the studio, while they're on camera on purpose. And another one talks about some body functions. I'm not going to go into in depth about those, but basically the reviews skyrocket, and it makes fun of it, but it is pretty memorable at the same time, and it is kind of relatable. In fact, there's a character named Linda who ends up freaking out about this the first time they do it because she's the boss, and they change the entire format of the show without telling her. I don't know. I can be a bit of a rebel sometimes. I like to go against the norm sometimes. There's nothing that makes Linda an unsympathetic character before this, but I just found her reaction funny. Sue me. So the next thing I'm going to be talking about is Ballistic X versus Sever. And I have to admit, this soundtrack is pretty good. Two of the songs that I chose for this episode were from that one. But Ballistic X versus Sever is infamous. It's the worst reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes. When it was released in 2002, it was obviously at 0%, and it is still at 0%. As of now, it has 117 negative reviews and not a single positive review. And yet, when I first saw it, my expectations were so low that I liked it. I even watched it more than a few times, and actually, I'd say maybe only like 30% of movies that I watch, I'll rewatch. But over time, my thoughts of the movie sort of diminished. X versus Sever is an action movie, and come to think of it, I say the X as in ECKS, not the letter, which you might have confused with. It's basically an explosion movie about a retired CIA or DIA agent named Jeremiah X who lost his wife in some mysterious car explosion, but now there's someone who has kidnapped the son of a man named Robert Gant. I think he's the leader of the DIA, and he was kidnapped by a woman played by Lucy Liu, and we find out her name is Sever. And well, they need X to get out of retirement to find her, and in return, they'll show her the location of her wife that really isn't dead. And basically, Lucy Liu is at the helm in this movie. She gets to fire so many different machine guns. She's a one-woman killing machine, and it is pretty fun to watch. This is a movie that you're not gonna be bored of, and yet at the same time, when you finish it and think about it, like the story has some major shortcomings. For instance, most of the plot centers around this device inside the body of the sun, and a one-man killing machine, and you might. Like one button, the one character says, and you could give a head of state a heart attack. And I kept thinking, if they use that a bit differently, like there are so many guns, and those guns obviously kill instantly. I feel like maybe if they had a subplot where it could be sneaked in, if you actually like just touched someone by the arm or the suit, and that would kill them, that would be a lot more advantageous. But it doesn't mention this. In fact, Roger Ebert, who hated the movie, said, why not just throw away the device that's apparently worth millions of dollars and spend the rest on school lunches? But and also, it has some very strange fight choreography. Like, these characters will have these guns that are just fine, and then just put them down and settle for something else. And we can tell that they didn't even check to see if they were empty or not. One of the worst examples I felt was when X and Sever are on a rooftop. X has the gun pointed at Sever. She asks, "Where is my wife?" He has a gun that requires two hands, but then he decides to switch his gun to a regular handgun, and that allows Sever to get a little bit of an advantage over him. It's not quite that simple. It involves a bit of throwing and a bit of kicking. It could almost seem like a strange dance, but I kept thinking, I didn't hear that gun click. I feel like if X had pointed the gun up and then it clicked, that would have given him a reason to switch guns, but there was no reason shown. So I'm sorry, just when I'm a movie critic, flaws like that can be pretty memorable, especially when you watch the movie over and over. The next one I'm going to be talking about is Captain Phillips. I think this won Tom Hanks a Golden Globe Award or something, or a nomination. But it's basically based on a true story about these Somalian pirates who abduct a big ship, a cargo ship, and end up taking the man, I forget his name, I forget Captain Phillips, hostage for a few days. And I saw it once. I enjoyed myself, but I felt like this was a movie you only had to see once, and maybe a bit overhyped considering it was at like 93% on the tomato meter. I wasn't as in suspense as I wanted to be, and the abduction scene when the pirates end up taking the ship, it takes a little too long, and I don't know. The end was a bit depressing. I don't know. I saw it, I thought about it enough to do a review. Once was enough, and I gave it a B. Wait, did I say I gave it a B already? I don't remember, but now you know it, and you'll ace a test if I ever give one to you. If anyone else ever gives one to you. Lord knows I'm not allowed to do that. Next, I'm going to be talking about It Comes at Night. This is the newest one I've talked about so far, and actually the only one released this year. This is a movie that is in a special format. You could even call it a clueless format. This is a movie about a family of four. A man named Paul, his wife Sarah, their son Travis, and Travis's wolfhound Stanley. Stanley. And they live in a house and they keep the door locked. They have these special rules because apparently there's some virus out that we don't know what it's called yet, but the only thing we know is it's very dangerous. It's either killing people or turning them insane or both. And then someone comes into the house. The man named Will explains that they were explains that he was just looking for water, and he has a family just a few miles, and he begs for his help. Paul agrees, but they still can't help but feel like something is coming for them, and that it comes at night. But by the end of the movie, there are a gazillion unanswered questions. And let me tell you how I first came across this movie. It was at 86% on the tomato meter for critics, but the number for audience was at 43%. Only 43% gave it a 3.5 or out of 5 or above. And also on CinemaScore, which reviews the audience reviews, it reviews on an A+ to F scale, and most of the time the ratings will be between an A or a C. It's very rare for something to get under a C+, actually. And It Comes at Night score was a D. So I kept thinking, which one am I going to fall under? So I had a shot at it. And I found out that the director of this movie wanted us to be as clueless as the other characters. And he wanted us to understand that sometimes not every character realizes what exactly happened. And I think that, he changed up the format so that the fear was something different than what we expected. And I read that some audiences booed at that, but some of the other critics found it genius. So I kept thinking, do I like that movie or hate it? Because I did feel a bit disappointed, but I felt like if I had fully embraced these ideas, I would have given it maybe a B or B+, because it is a well-shot movie, and there are even some scenes where a character is walking down a hall when I actually covered my hand because I was worried there was going to be a jump scare. And there are some jump scares, don't worry about that. But I felt like if I had expected something certain or was in a big horror movie mood, I would have given this movie an F. So I settled for a C. And so the last movie I'm going to be talking about with you today is Wreck-It Ralph. I was very stoked for this movie, and I saw it maybe 3 years ago or 2, and my sister ended up rewatching it instantly afterwards. I wasn't as impressed, but I found some stuff to be admirable about it. It's like It Comes at Night, but it doesn't step out of itself too much. My score bounced from a B to a C to a B- to a C+, and now I'm not sure exactly where I stand. It was just not what I expected it to be. I expected it to be Ralph joining Mario, Sonic, and Pikachu, exploring as many arcade games as possible, but it instead embraces being different from what we might expect, and it's basically just a movie about Ralph and a surprise friendship that he finds, and what it actually means to be a hero, and how someone can get out of a bad reputation. And I expected this one character to be severely annoying and just bring the movie down a lot. I was surprised when this character was a very big main focus, and we feel it really destroys our expectations. Sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit. I'm trying to find the right words for this. And another negative is Ralph's rival Fix-It Felix Jr. and his relationship with Sergeant Calhoun. It leads to a la 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 scene that I found it ear drumming. I've seen those a million times. They never really work for me. And I felt like the movie makers afterwards said that they felt like they didn't explore the universe enough, so they're going to make a sequel called Ralph Breaks the Internet. And I've heard that like Disney princesses are going to reprise their roles. Like, for instance, Irene Bedard, who played Pocahontas like 20 years ago, is going to reprise her role. I'm pretty excited for that. And there's also a twist involving a character named Turbo. He's the one that they basically reference when they mention how Ralph is trying to escape his video game and choose and try something different. I've seen some people's reactions to this twist, and it's genius. It's simple yet brilliant. I never saw it coming. I just feel like I expected something different, and I guess that that got the better of me in the end. But Wreck-It Ralph's really not a bad film. In fact, for a little while, this was my sister's all-time favorite film. So yeah, it's certainly not bad. So that's it for Weldon Witness, Bookworm, Film Geek, and Friend today. As usual, you can contact us at DCSI Riot Radio on Twitter and Instagram. And it's coming up later on maybe next week or in 2 weeks. I think I'm going to be discussing some of my all-time favorite books and all-time favorite movies, and maybe all-time least favorite books and movies. But I am pretty excited for that because there are some books and movies I've refrained from talking about, and when that happens, I'm gonna go bananas explaining how I love or hate them. It's movie and book critics they love talking about their all-time favorites or their all-time least favorites. So I'll see you around, and I hope you have a great week. I'm William McGinn, and I'll see you next week.